Hey VAT, this is a video for Mrs. Gus's VAT class going over how to create a Crazy 8 project. So we learned this project in Photoshop, and if you missed it or you're making an extra, this can help walk you through what I taught in class. So we're going to start in Adobe Photoshop, and you're going to create a new file. You're going to go to Print, and you're going to keep this letter size file. You're going to title it Crazy 8. And what we're going to do is make it 8 inches by 8 inches and 188 resolution. So that keeps it a square, and 188, just because we're using a lot of 8s, it's sort of a medium resolution. Hit create. You should have already assembled a folder of pictures that you're going to use for this project. They were listed on GusVat right here. So I was asking you to go to pexels.com and find one or more of each of these examples. For the extra project, it doesn't matter, but this is what I taught in class for the main project. So you're going to File, Place Embedded, and navigate to that folder, wherever you have all those images. So the first one that we're going to lay in is our drawing or painting. So that would be this one, painting. And you're going to just pull on these anchor points and stretch it. You're going to lose part of your photo. You can move it around to find the part that you like the most, but please make sure there's no white space left. You're going to hit Enter, and you're automatically going to go up to the layer in your layer palette here. If you don't see it, it's in Window, Layers. You're going to go to that layer, right-click, and rasterize the layer. You're going to name that Layer 1. Then we're going to File, Place Embedded again. This is going to be your outer space layer. So again, you're stretching a lot and losing a little bit of that photo, but the idea is to fill in that white space. So hit Enter, right-click on the layer, rasterize, soft double-click, Layer 2. The next layer is going to be our electrical. So File, Place Embedded, Electrical, and Stretch. I'm going to pause the video there and let you and me put in those layers. You're going to use that same method of rasterizing and naming until you have 8 layers according to this list. Okay, so I have all 8 layers in here. You can't see anything but layer 8 because the eyeballs are the opacity of the layers, which each layer is at 100% opacity. So whichever layer is on top is the layer that you can only see. So what we're going to do now is adjust the layers according to what's listed per layer. So layer 1 is going to be just playing with transparency. So what we're going to do is move layer 1 up to the top so we can see it. And then we're going to lower opacity. That's what transparency is. So lower that down. Don't fall in love with what you do here because we're going to mess these layers up entirely. Just lower your opacity. That's all you have to do. Layer 2 is going to call for blend modes. This is a little bit more exciting. So we're going to move layer 2 up above layer 1. We're going to hide layer 1 so that you can see layer 2. The light gray bar means that's the layer that Photoshop thinks you're working on. So make sure when I say do this on layer 2, that's the layer that's gray. So what we're going to do here is go up to Normal, and we're going to drop down through these blend modes, and you're going to see that layer blend into the layer beneath it. So when you like one, just click it rather. Again, this is going to really change once we go through all those layers. So you're going to hide layer 2 and you're going to bring layer 3 up. So see how it lights up and shows you where it's going to drop. So you drag it right in between layer 2 and layer 8. So layer 3 is activated, layer 1 and layer 2 are hidden because you turned off the eyeball. The next thing that we are going to do is play with image adjustments. So this is kind of basic photo editing. With layer 3 activated, you're going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and you can play with, let's just do Hue Saturation. So when you slide through Hue, you can see the colors change according to what color you are on the slider. You can also increase saturation or decrease saturation. So just set that on something you think is appealing. And then we're going to hide that layer, and you're going to bring up layer 4. On layer 4, we are going to do selection, shapes, and delete, which means we're going to use a totally new tool. So up here at the top of your bar, yours should be set like this. You're going to click with this thing that says rectangular marquee. You're just going to click it. And what happens here is when you drag a section, you're going to get a box. And those little black and white dots are called, well, I call them dancing ants. And that means whatever you do, only what's in that box will be affected on layer 4. Layer 4 is selected, the box is selected. On your keyboard, hit delete. And what you're doing there is you're basically deleting everything inside that box. So for layer 4, I want you to drag different rectangle shapes and delete. If you want to get wild and play with these other shapes like circles and make dots or ovals, you can do that too. That's completely up to you. So you can create a pattern. You can get rid of most of your photo if that makes you happy. So you're like literally just pulling out a whole bunch of the photo. That's fine by me too. Pretty much the more you delete away, the more interesting your other layers will be. So you can see on our thumbnail here, you can see that checkerboard. The checkerboard is this. So checkerboard means nothing. So when you see the checkerboard in this thumbnail, it's telling you, you literally deleted through. Even though these other layers are there, there's nothing on that part of layer 4. So we're going to hide layer 4, bring up layer 5. Now I've got these little ants happening here, so they're still selected. To get rid of them, you hit Control D on your keyboard to get rid of them. If at any time you mess up, remember you have Control Z as a step back option. So you can just keep Control Zing until you get back to where you need to be. There's also a button up here called the History panel. And if you slide that down, you can see all the steps that you've just done. So you could go back in time rather, if you want to, or go back to where you were when you hit the panel. So there's some fail-safes if you run into some trouble. So the next layer is layer 5, and we're going to erase on this layer. So that means we're going to go over here to this tool called the eraser tool. It looks like an upside-down eraser. And forgive me a minute, mine is not preset. Okay, there we go. Yours should look like a round thing, and if you do this, it erases. So you can erase with just this round eraser, as is. Or you can right-click and you can make that size bigger, or you can right-click and you can make it harder so you get sharp edges and sharp lines. So all I'm going to have you do here is just sort of like randomly erase. Like, you can go smoothly around your animal if you want, but just kind of scribble in. I'm going to Control Z a little bit and soften up those edges. I don't like them that harsh. So I'm Control Zing, right-click, lower my hardness. And so I'm just kind of scribbling just to erase away some layers, or some of that layer. So just random erasing. Hide layer 5. Pull up layer 6. So layer 6, what we're going to do is erase with brush textures. So this is a little bit different. We are going to turn on our brush tool. And when you right-click with the brush tool, you get all these different settings here. So these are different brushes. But some other things happen, and it gets a little confusing, because some of these are brushes, some of these are blends, and so I don't want you to use that. What I want you to use instead, go back to the brush, is I want you to go over here to your brush settings. That's going to give you a whole lot of brush options. So let's say I go to this big spongy thing, and what did I do here? Let's pull this back in. Oh, I lost my layer. So if you get to that no sign, it means you deselected a layer. So deselect layer 6, then go to settings. There we go. So now when I hover, see that shape? That's the shape that my brush is. In order to erase with the brush, up here where it says mode, you're going to choose clear. And when I click, it's erasing through to that layer beneath it. So I can change the size of this guy. I can drag if I want. I don't like that though. I can go to different brushes and make those really large and like click away like this, so I get just sort of a soft texture all over my landscape layer. Kind of like that, so I'm going to keep going with that. But you can play with any of those brush settings. As long as you set on clear, it's erasing. So I want you to know those brush settings because the next thing we're going to do is physically brush. So once you have that set, hide layer 6. See the checkerboard showing through? Hide layer 6. Pull up layer 7. And layer 7 is using the brush to paint. So instead of setting to clear, we're going to set to normal. And the color that is going to come out is in this box right here. So if I click here or drag, I've got a black paintbrush. So what I would like to do, actually I want a different brush. So I'm going to go back to brush settings. I'm going to go to a splattery kind of guy, and I'm going to make it really big. And if I click, there you go. So there's my black paint. If I drag, I've got lots of black paint. If I want a different color, I can click on this guy, pick any color my little heart desires, although that's kind of aggressive. Well, it's not that bad, but let's say you chose like a bright yellow. That's obnoxious, and that doesn't really fit with anything. So what you could do instead is when you click on this color picker, leave the color picker and pull a color from your photo beneath. So I'm going to go to this yellow. I'm on my brush again, and now I'm brushing with yellow. So I'm kind of keeping it harmonious and colors that are coming from the photo. So you do whatever you want. If you want to draw, if you want to splatter, you can play with anything. Remember, Control-Z is your friend, so if you don't like it, Control-Z. So that is layer 7. We're going to hide that. Layer 8 involves using filters, and there's a lot you can do here. So on layer 8, you're going to go up to Filter, and there's a whole filter gallery here that maybe you want to start in. It takes you to a different box, and you're really zoomed in, so you can see there's my stripes, but they've got glowing edges happening. So you can drop down here and choose all these different things, and so these filters make them look like paintings or art, or they distort like glass or ripples, or they do stylize with that glowing edges that you saw. There's a whole bunch of filters. So basically just find a filter that you like. By the way, we can zoom here. You can't see it. And click OK. So now we have all of our layers that have something on them according to the directions here. So the last thing we're going to do is turn all of our layers on. And you can't see anything but layer 1 and layer 2 because layer 1 is a see-through layer. So what happens if I bring like layer 6 up under 1? Now it's a different look. Or layer 7 up under 1. Now it's a different look. But what happens if on layer 7 I lower the opacity so you can start to see through to the next layer? Or what happens if I bring layer 4 up and I lower that opacity? Or what if I do a blend mode on it? So now I want you to play with everything that we've learned and see what you can create. The only thing I'm asking for this project is that you have some type of a focal point. So there's something that stands out. So something that is more visible than anything else. If you feel like what you made doesn't have a focal point and none of your pictures do, feel free to bring in another photo and mess around, but you want to have a focal point. And so now what I have is that peacock on top, and I put a blend mode. I've got this layer underneath with low opacity. I've got layer 1 with low opacity. And I've got layer 7 with low opacity, and layer 6 already has some see-through stuff. So I can't really see these layers underneath, so if I want to start bringing those up, I could, but it's really going to change my design. So maybe I want to erase on that layer, or maybe I want opacity again. So just keep playing with the layers. If you hate a layer and you want to turn it off, I'm fine with that. But what you're trying to create is something with a focal point, or an emphasis area, something that stands out, things that look like they go together, and that is what you do to finalize your Crazy 8. Make sure you save that in your drive as a Photoshop file, and click OK. And if you're saving it for your portfolio, you file Save As, save it as a JPEG, and then click Save and click